Hello and welcome back to the channel. Well, today I've got a model that I've been looking forward to doing for quite some time, and that's the 12Go M2 Bradley. Seen here, all its glory. So, usual format, 60-second speed build, some pics, and then we'll get to the review. So, let's crack on and build. Right, the Bradley made a bit of a name for itself in the Ukraine recently. So, what do we think of this? Well, normally I start with instructions, but I've got quite a bit to say about them, so I'll come back to that. But what we need to know first of all is that there was nothing missing, there was nothing warped, and there was nothing discoloured, which is quite good because I've still got a Leopard that I am, well, given up waiting for parts for, because I was missing quite a lot from 12Go, so I'm going to probably end up having to 3D print them. But the instructions, it's a nice booklet. It gives the impression of giving you extra stuff inside, but doesn't actually really give you anything extra. And this, in a lot of ways, a couple of weeks ago I did the Jag Panzer IV by Kazi, and in that I complained that while the build was fantastic, the instructions were brilliant, the final model left something to be desired as far as accuracy is concerned. The proportions were all wrong. This is the total opposite, in that the end model is great. The proportions are there for I'm not exactly sure of the scale, but having put some of my son's toy soldiers up against it, I would say that this is about 1/32nd, maybe 1/35th scale, and you get no minifigures with this, by the way, which is consistent with 12Go's approach across the board. However, the instructions are, while they're presented nicely, they have a habit, I find, of being extremely rigid in their depiction on the page. And what can happen is that, let's say you have 7 pieces on a particular section to attach. 6 of them will be fine, but then you've got the 7th one, and it really is trying to work out exactly where that goes, because it actually ends up going behind something else, but it doesn't tell you that. So it's a case of having to work it out, and quite often you end up just putting that one bit to one side because you can't work it out. And it's only on later stages when you think, well, this bit they now want me to put on is not supported. And you have to sort of wind your memory back 4 or 5 stages, or sometimes even further, to, right, okay, that must go there to support this bit here. So it's not particularly intuitive in the way that it's presented. The build is consistent all the way through, but you've got a lot of that going on. And there was another model, it wasn't 12 Go, that I had some time ago that had a similar sort of thing, and it is so annoying because it slows you right down, and you end up making a lot of unforced errors. The other problem that you have with the very rigid approach on the instructions is placement. So, for instance, when you're putting, not the side skirts here, but when you're putting the sides that are underneath it on, it's very difficult to work out exactly how far along it should be. And this again is consistent in a lot of areas where you're building up certain pieces and then attaching them to the main body, but it's very difficult to get that placement correct because, you know, say for instance it actually wants you to overhang a bit by two studs at the back, for instance. It's very difficult to work out whether it should be level with the back of the vehicle, whether it should be overhanging by one stud, two stud, four stud. There's a lot of that goes on. So there was a lot of toing and froing, going backwards and forwards rather than constantly forwards in the build, which is one of those things that could be really easily eliminated, and just it does colour the perception of the model, unfortunately, in that it wasn't the most fun thing to build, which is a real shame because the level of detail on this is fantastic, especially inside. You've got lots of different compartments that you can access. Let's just lift that out a second. You've got a full interior that you can look into in a couple of different places. There's hatches all over the place here. Oops. As well as on the top. It's a very, very good and detailed model. It's just very inconsistent to build, and it is I've named this video trial and error, and that's what it felt like I was doing. It's like, well, I'll put this bit on, but I realise I might have to move it again in half an hour or 3 or 4 stages down the line, which, yeah, as I say, it's not great. Now, the other issue I had with this, and this is unfortunately a little bit consistent with 12 Go, is on the decals. Now, I've complained about the decals before with 12 Go. On the T14, it might be the colour, the green. They looked a bit cheap and trashy against the green of the actual tank itself. On the Abrams X that I did, the decals themselves seem really cheap and nasty. You were trying to pull them off either from the model or just off the paper, and they were ripping so easily. This went one stage further in that I was having great difficulty getting them off the actual paper itself. So obviously with the decal, you've got the top layer of plastic, you've got the decal behind it, and then it's on the paper, and you pull it off, put it on the machine, rub it in, pull off the plastic. But on probably 70% of the stickers, and there's a fair old few stickers for this, it didn't matter where, how what technique you tried to use, these things were not coming off the paper at all. It was almost like they were out of date. Now with a very sharp craft knife, you were then able to lift those decals off the paper, but they were incredibly fragile. Now it wasn't quite so bad with things like that decal there or that decal there, the sort of solid, square, rectangular type of ones. But when you came to long decals, which were just strips, you'd get them off, and if you touched them with your finger on the sticky side, they would fall apart. So you quite often have them on your finger to try and lay down there, but as you were trying to unstick it from your finger, it would just come off. It would separate away from the main part of the decal and just stay on your finger. It was, as I say, it was almost like they were out of date, which is something I've not come across, not on that scale before. Perhaps they were just printed on a Friday afternoon, I don't know, but it is a consistent thing that I've had with the 3 12-go models that I've managed to complete, that the decals, if there's one thing they need to do, even perhaps more than the instructions, to take a second look at, is to sort out these decals. You know, they're going 12-go, are positioning themselves as a premium retailer of these brick models, but they've got to be able to do it in all the areas, not just the model itself. If they're going to be throwing decals at it, then they need to be quality decals. If they're not going to do quality decals, then print the bricks. That's, yeah, as I say, unfortunately that's some of the things they've been very consistent on, is the substandard decals, and yeah, they've proved the point yet again on this, which is a real shame, because once the decals are on, these actually are a vast improvement. Could be the colour of the bricks, but they do seem to be a vast improvement on the previous 2 models that I've done. So yeah, it's, as I say, it's the total opposite of the Jag Panzer IV, which was a great build, a lot of fun to do, really engaging, but ended up with being a model. This was tricky to build, confusing, the decals weren't great, but you ended up with a good model at the end. So for that reason I can recommend it, but and it will take some time to do, because this is a fairly hefty old beast and there's a lot of pieces with it. Now this came in to me at £23.03 landed to the UK, so that's excellent value for what this is. And to be honest with you, even if you were just looking at topping up your spares collection, well, £23 for 2,000 bricks is very good indeed. So there we go, it's an excellent model at the end. It's a bit of a pain in the backside to get there, but once you do, it's looking pretty good, I have to say. I think this one will stay on the shelf back there for some time yet. But there we go, that's today's review of the M2 Bradley by 12Go. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like and subscribe to the channel, and I will catch you again. You take care. Bye bye.